We are the Muslim wing of the black grassroots. Unapologetic, strong, uncompromising voices that have been in the faces of the enemy and those who tap dance for them. The Features is proud to present the archives exclusively on Patreon. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam Rasulullah wa ba'd. In the name of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and final messenger. As to what follows, family, friends, foes, haters, and hateettes, welcome back to the Features. I greet you all in peace and love with no hatred in my heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we begin, please like, please subscribe, and please share. As you know, we got a lot of haters up in here. And this week on the Features, we have another live convert profiles with Sister Michelle Renee Davis. Assalamu alaikum, sis.
Wa alaikum salam.
It's a very big pleasure and honor to have you on the show. And you caught my attention recently because you've been putting out content based upon therapy and mental health. And it was actually incredibly informative and really, really good content. So can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and give us some background about yourself?
So I am a licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania. And my degree is in counseling psychology. Well, my master's degree is in counseling psychology with a focus in trauma counseling. So majority of the people that I see is more of relational trauma that people experience and basically teaching people, helping people look at themselves and seeing how they relate to themselves, to other people, and to their surroundings, and help them navigate that and bring them back to basically homeostasis. And I use holistic approaches, meaning that I use, regardless if it's how you eat, your spirituality, your emotions, and your mental health. I cover all of the bases to help move you in that direction. So that's basically what I do.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And I saw one of your interviews, and you had a very interesting story that really caught my attention. It was about your conversion story, and then you actually left Islam, and then you came back to Islam, right? So if you could tell us about your conversion story, how you came into Islam the first time, let us know about that.
So the first time around, so in Philly, it's this masjid that's in Germantown, and I was on a bus, and the bus was riding past, and I was looking at the letters, and I was like, "Oh, look at those! That's really nice. It's glowing." I'm like,
The
that's really
Arabic,
nice.
right? Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, that's really nice.
yeah.
So, but nothing happened. Then one of the so I was 16 years old. So I went to my old group home because one of my friends was there, and she was like, "I'm about to go and take my shahada. Can you come with me?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" Like, we just walked to Erie Avenue in Philadelphia, and she took her shahada, and then the brother turned to me and was like, "What about you?" I was like, I've thought about it. I was like, but I never really, I said, I feel like I don't know enough to make that leap. And he was
Yeah.
like, well, he's like, what if you walk out of here and just get hit by a car and then that's it? He was like, then you never get that chance and it's done. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'll do it now. And so we walked in half dressed and walked out fully covered. fully covered. Um, and I took it very, very seriously. So at the particular masjid I used to go to the Shahada class every weekend to learn how to pray, learn the basic Akida and things like that. But how about I was talking to somebody and I was like, I really like this masjid because years ago I was riding past it and the lights glow. And it was like, no, they don't. I was like, yes, they do. I'm like, I saw it with my own eyes. I was like, no, they don't glow. I'm sorry to tell you. And just to make sure, I literally went at nighttime to make sure that they didn't glow. And I'm like, they really don't. So, that was definitely my calling, I guess. So,
Mashallah, mashallah. And what is your studying into Islam like before up until that point when you went into the masjid?
um, s- wait, like before I took
Yeah,
shahada,
yeah,
it wasn't really. It was kid like,
yeah,
oh, because you ask some people some stuff. I'm like, oh, why you do this and why you do that? You see stuff on
yeah,
TV. It wasn't really in depth
yeah.
like how in my mind it was, because
Mhm.
looking back on it, it wasn't that deep. But I still had an interest in the way women covered. And
Yeah.
that was really what attracted me the most is I always feel like it looks nice. Also.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I know a sister, she became Muslim because she saw Muslims praying.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah, she just saw the Muslims praying, and she asked because she was living in Saudi Arabia, and she asked, she's working in Saudi Arabia, and she's asking her kafil, or her, like, how do you say kafil, like her sponsor, right?
Mhm.
You know, how can I be like these people? Like, she didn't even know how to say it, right? She goes, I want to be this religion that these people are, right?
Mhm.
And then she became Muslim just like that, right? So yeah, and even me myself, like when I became Muslim, I didn't know much about Islam at all. All I knew, right, is that I heard like a cassette from Louis Farrakhan, right, and this was way back in the '90s, right, and I believe I heard this cassette maybe '89, but I became Muslim in 1990, right, and that was like, I don't know anything about this Islam stuff, but it's definitely better than Christianity, right? So that was enough for me, all
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
All right. So what year did you become Muslim?
Oh, so I was 16, so that was 2004.
Mm,
Yes,
mhm.
2004. Because I
Yeah.
graduated the next year, so it was in 2004 when I took
Mhm,
Shahada. And when I came in,
mhm,
I ain't know nothing about like meth habs and
mhm,
this, that, and so
mhm,
I joined a particular
mhm,
group
mhm.
that's a little bit more extreme. So I wound up getting caught up in the degradation of like other Muslims when they were doing something wrong.
What's the name of this group? It's
I
okay.
was
You can say it. You can say it. It's no problem.
I was Salafi.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Okay.
so that was something that I feel like it wasn't necessarily taught
Mhm,
in the community. Like I never went to a lecture and them saying that. They
mhm,
always, but the people all like I've never met. Well, that's a lie. I take that back. I have met nice Salafi Muslim sisters and stuff.
mhm.
So I'm not gonna say that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
majority of them, if you go to a masjid and say for whatever reason,
Mhm,
you have on regular clothes, oh, you getting talked about. Everybody is going to say something. And if the sister is married, oh, let me go get my husband because she just going to marry him. Like sis, like I don't even know what you're talking about.
mhm,
Um, and that was how it was. I've participated in conversations like that, like, oh, look at her, she ain't got her niqab on. They're like, yes,
yeah,
she is so fresh. And it
yeah,
was
yeah.
like when I think back on it, I'm like not ashamed, but like embarrassed that I even had that thought process to talk about other sisters in that manner.
Mhm, mhm,
And is I don't know how it is with the brothers because obviously I don't hang with the brothers,
mhm,
but I know my experience of being married to some brothers that it wasn't a good experience. And again, I don't want to characterize the whole entire group that it's only them, but one of the things that I've learned since being a therapist is
mhm,
when a majority is a particular kind of way is
mhm,
because the top is that way too, and it
mhm,
trickles down.
mhm,
um Either that or there's just no leadership at all and everybody is just doing what they want to do.
mhm,
And leadership is very, very important. And I feel like in our communities in Philly, we don't have a lot of leaders. We
mhm,
have people that are leaders, but we don't have people that are leaders, if that makes sense.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
where there's speaking out against it publicly. Like they'll, have a cookbook about it, or, whatever, but they don't go in the streets, because I remember when I was growing up as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
you weren't selling drugs on the corner of nobody's block, because Muslim people be like, no, we're not doing that over here. They don't do that. They be like, I'm gonna mind my business, and
Yeah.
mind their business. And I think men need to get back to that way of protecting their community.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Oh yes, I know. I know very well. I know very well. So I'm Salafi, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't start off Salafi, right? And I know exactly what you're talking about, right? And you were mentioning about leadership,
Mhm.
right? Tell us a little bit about the leadership at this time.
When I back then,
Yes.
so this is how bad it was. So one day I caught the not yeah I caught the eye of an imam,
Mm.
and he literally used to drive me to school.
Mm.
He would come to my group home
Mm-hmm.
and drive me to school,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that I didn't have no wakil. I had no knowledge of what being a wife
Sure.
really is, what being a
Mm-hmm.
Muslim really is.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he like not even realized, because I didn't know that wasn't even appropriate. I'm just like, what? I ain't got to catch the bus to school. Sure thing, come pick me up. Like, thank you, and go to school.
Mm.
Um, and now being an adult, and it's funny because I forgot all about that. But being an adult now, that was very predatorial, knowing that I didn't have anybody that was going to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm in DHS. If I up and ran away, nobody's going to look for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, and I'm not saying that the brother would have did anything, but who's to say? Like, I didn't get shipped somewhere and can't
Mm-hmm.
come back.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I probably would have did it. No, probably not. I wasn't that dumb, but I probably moved out the states. To stay some crap and trying to get back. But
Mm-hmm.
so that's, and I've had many, many experiences like that. Even I've had brothers where, because again, like I didn't know nothing. I'm 16, so it's just one brother that he used to sell oils on the corner. Me and him
Mm-hmm.
were talking, busting it up, blah blah blah. And when I finally got married to someone who was the same, of age like I am, he became all upset. And I'm like, why is he upset? Because again, I'm a child, so I'm just like, why is he upset? Not realizing, no, he was plotting. Like, I was his next dinner, I guess. Like, I don't know, but just the inappropriateness. And obviously, I'm quite sure, because we was in a busy intersection. I'm
Mm-hmm.
quite sure other Muslims seen us.
Mm-hmm.
No one said nothing.
Mm-hmm.
No one said
Mm-hmm.
anything. So, you know, that's
Mm-hmm. And
that's
now tell us about leading up to the first time you left Islam. What are the events that led up to that?
the events that led up to it was that I had too much pride in my ability to convert people.
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
so because I felt like, because my oldest son died, I converted him so that we can marry. I thought that I could do that again. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not thinking, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I met him. He was Christian. And so we used to have religious debates like all the time. We used to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And not realizing that with Islam, you can use logic, but not with everything. Everything is not logical. Some things you have to have you should always have the Quran and the Sunnah when you're
Mm-hmm.
approaching any subject. But it's just certain things that it's just like, I don't, I don't need to go and say, because this is obvious, like,
Mm-hmm.
don't do this, don't rob,
Yeah.
steal, or kill, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought to me like the verses about, if a man couldn't get married, then it was better for him to basically cohabitate with his slave. And he
Mm-hmm.
was like, and of course, I believe in abuse of power.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have so I'm like, yeah, if if you're somebody's master, they're more inclined to say yes because
Mm,
it's you own them.
mm,
But not understanding what that really is,
mm.
I didn't really get it, and I didn't look to see, because if I would have known the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi
Say
wasallam,
so. Yeah.
even a sister who married him so that all her family could be freed,
Mm,
and he freed everybody.
yeah.
So, and that was her choice, you know,
Mm,
um, and it was out of ignorance.
mm,
So then it was that, but then also because, reading is fundamental. If y'all don't learn nothing,
mm.
reading is fundamental.
Yep.
Because he presented me with something that was like, um, it was translated incorrectly. And
Mm,
basically like, they it was something like they think that they're plotting and deceiving anyone, but Allah Allah is the best of deceivers, right?
mm,
So I'm like, he was like, you think God's gonna be like deceptive? And I'm like, this is crazy. And I was like, you know what? I was like, yeah, I'm,
mm.
I'm gonna give it up.
Yeah.
Um, and the funniest thing is, even after I gave it up,
Mm.
when I used to talk to people, I used to be like, oh, alhamdulillah. Like, and they were like, I'm like, don't worry about it. Just keep going. And that lasted for about 2 or 3 years.
Mm,
Like just saying like mashallah, alhamdulillah and stuff like that.
mm.
And then I used to always still like look, because I liked how they dress. So I used to always be like, dang, I want to dress like that. People like, well, still dress like it, because in other countries, like, that's how Christians and stuff dress. And I was like, yeah, but we all know what that means here. And I don't want to be like, they be like, Salaam alaikum. And I'm not be like, no, I'm not Muslim. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
that's weird. So
Mm,
I went back to church.
mm,
Of course, like the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, it never made sense to me. And even when I try to make sense of it, and when somebody explained it, I'm like, oh, I get it. Probably like 2 days later, I'm like, no, I really don't get it. It doesn't make
mm,
sense to me. So they lasted for about 6 years. For about
mm,
6 years. And after me and him divorced, um, I met someone else,
mm.
obviously. And we were talking about it and stuff. And they was like, oh, that's incorrect. And, they gave me all the proofs and stuff like that. So I was like, I knew it couldn't have been true. Like, I was like, because that was just too much.
Yeah.
So I came back, but you know what the interesting thing was? All the surahs that I learned, I forgot all of them,
Mm.
except Surah Al-Ikhlas.
Yep.
I never forgot it, because we were talking. I was like, oh, I was like, Kullahu kufuwan ahad. He was like, yeah,
Mm,
I'm not surprised you remember that. So I'm like,
mm.
I opened it up. I was like, the lost one was I got jokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I never forgot it, and I just think that eventually I would have made my way back, you
Mm,
know, because it's just who I am. Like being Muslim is who I am.
mm, mm. You know, when it comes to slavery, slavery in itself is like a sore spot for Black folk, and it's something that the kuffar they like to exploit. You understand? Because when you say slavery to a Black person in our times, they're thinking that double um, slavery that Europeans had inflicted on people of African descent, right? That's what they're thinking in their head, right? Not knowing that slavery is something that is incredibly old, all the way to the time of Pharaoh, right? And many nations practice slavery, but not that double racist slavery,
Mhm.
right? So in Islam, slavery is more of, uh, you can say either indentured servitude or like prisoners of war. That's what is meant by slavery. The racism as a construct didn't start until about the 15th century. Okay, and that devil of slavery that was brought by Europeans is the first time in history that people were made slaves specifically because of race, right? Because before that, there was no such thing called racism,
Mhm.
right? You can't find the word racism anywhere, right? The word racism, right? It actually started in Spain, right? And it comes from the word raza. Raza. Raza means race. Like they were racing to see who would be at the top. And it started in Spain, racism as a concept with the Spanish Inquisition. People don't know that. People think that this type of racism that we understand today has always existed. You understand? So now they automatically equate slavery with racism because in our time that's what it is. But
Mhm.
it wasn't like that before. Anybody could be a slave, right? In the past, right? And there are many. As a matter of fact, the word slave comes from Slovenia or the Slavic countries
Mhm.
because they were the slave. They were that's the etymology of that word because that part of Europe were considered the slave class of Europeans. So slave comes from that word from Europe from the European Slavs, right?
Mhm.
The Slavs, right? So now, if you don't have knowledge of this, and you as a black person see, that you could take your slaves and these type of things, you're thinking in your mind, you're thinking this devil slavery that these devils did, right, from Europe to Africans, and they continue to do up until this day, right, and have other people participating in it, including Arabs, right, and that's a completely different thing, completely and totally different thing, right? So, and you mentioned about Allah deceiving the people, right? So what Allah says, uh, he says that Allah is khairul makirin. He's the best of planners. You know,
Mhm.
فَإِنْهُمْ يَكِيدُ كَيْدًا فَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا, right? So verily they plot and plan, and Allah plots and plans, right? And Allah is the best of planners, meaning that they can't outplot Allah. You understand, right?
Yeah,
So
when I open the book.
yeah, right. So with Black people in Islam now, our history of Islam in the West
Mhm.
has been one of total interference from other people groups, like everything else in our existence, right? So when you're talking about the Salafi Dawah was spreading and growing, and it was good, and particularly in the 90s, right? And it was helping people. And when you were mentioning about how, the concept that the Muslims they would go out in the streets and they would prevent the drug dealers. That was actually happening from the Salafis in the 90s,
Mhm.
right? The Salafis were the ones that were doing that, right? And what happened was, as usual, and as per our history, it was foreigners that came around the same time that you became Muslim. So I'm listening now. You said you became Muslim in 2004. That's the exact time that these foreigners came and switched up everything, and they started making Islam this type of ritualistic, dogmatic approach. So now the woman, if they see a sister without a niqab or all black abayas and things of this nature, they're going to lose their minds. That
Mhm.
wasn't happening before,
Mhm.
right? The
No.
Salafi was all it was is that our approach to Islam is that we follow the Quran and the Sunnah the way that the Sahaba understood it. That was it. It wasn't until these British came from Spubs and them, right? Salafi publication until they started coming on the scene in the West that everything changed, right? And remember, in those days, it was Salafi publications who ruled the internet because they were the only Salafi website all the way up until the mid 2000s was them and Troy. And then afterwards, you started seeing some of the other websites like Manhaj.com out of Philly and these other type of websites. So they were the ones that were controlling them. They had a monopoly on a narrative,
Mhm.
for that entire block of time, right? So anyways, tell us about your return to Islam now.
Yeah, so my return back, it's been it's been interesting. I'm going on 3 years now.
Hmm.
I want to say, yeah, 3 years. Um, and I feel more dedicated now too than I did the first time around.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like my faith is better, mashallah. May I keep it at me.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
but I feel like it's definitely stronger. Um, like I'm enjoying my process. And on top of it, I feel like my life has improved so much so more now than even back then. I was more stressed. I mean, even though I'm still stressed now, but I just feel like,
Mhm.
just knowing that, you know, the qadr of Allah is going to happen regardless. And I
Mhm.
believe that Allah wants what's best for me. So it just gives me a lot of ease knowing that everything is going to work out,
Mhm.
regardless of my craziness or my sins or whatever. Because, evil is from me, good things are from Allah. Thank goodness, because if I was only me, I'll be done for.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm just really enjoying the process. I really am. A lot of stuff that I got to work on,
Mhm.
but it's good.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about your life, because you had mentioned before that you had gone through some trauma, which kind of is as it's a very integral part of your development up until the stage of what you're doing, right? So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that growing up and some of the things that went on in your life.
So growing up, my father was well, mentally and emotionally and physically abusive.
Mhm.
Um, like he would I can't, even though I'm probably over exaggerating, I don't remember a day when he didn't either call me stupid, dumb, or beat me for
Mhm.
something. And my mom, she was on drugs at the time. She was using crack cocaine. So um my mom wasn't neglectful per se, because like she always made sure we was fed, clothed, sheltered, all of those kinds of things. But I don't think she knew how to protect us physically, you know.
Mhm.
Even though domestic violence was like a big thing in my household. My mom used to, fight my dad all the time. I used to always have to run and call the police because they were fighting
Mhm.
and things like that. So when he left and moved out and moved to California, like I was excited, I was ecstatic. Like, yes, um,
Mhm.
I'm so glad to get rid of him, because to this day, like it was two main beatings I will never ever forget.
Mhm.
And if I told you well, I'm going to tell you what it was about. But I was in the tub and I had called my mom to ask for a rag, because I used to famously forget to get a rag. She would always bring me one. He came in the bathroom and was like, "Come to my room after you get out." So I already knew what it was about. I'm like, he's going to beat me. I was like, I don't want to come. He came back and beat me in the tub.
Mhm.
I was 9. Um, and then he beat me again once. But I deserved the beating, but not like this. I had accidentally dropped a candle and set my basement on fire.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I get it. But thank goodness it was the basement and it wasn't finished. So,
Mhm.
nothing happened, alhamdulillah. But he beat me so long that the belt actually popped. I don't
Mhm.
know if it was already like damaged or whatever, but I just remember it breaking into two for how long he beat me for.
Mhm.
Um, so when he left, I was happy. And then my mom got a new boyfriend.
Mhm.
Um, and he had porn on for me. That was the grooming. And I never said anything. I didn't tell my mom. And I think knowing that I was never protected by her was probably why I never said anything.
Mhm.
So I never said anything. And eventually, and I actually found out recently that the reason why her and him had got into a fight, because one time it was a really, really horrible fight. She stabbed him in the back. She cut his leg where like meat was falling out of it.
Mm.
And she said she did that because one of my friends told my mom that he had showed us porn.
Mm.
And for the life of me, even as I look at my mom today, I'm like, he showed me porn and you stayed.
Mm.
So, moving forward, so he used to come into my bedroom while my mom was asleep.
Mm.
Um, and used to do oral sex. That was all that he would do. Nothing else. Then we wound up getting kicked out, moving into a shelter. She was getting clean and sober, so she met somebody else who was in the process of getting clean and sober. My mom had my mom had actually asked me like to steal some stuff from this lady, and because I'm a kid, right? I
Mm.
just like stole all this stuff. Like she
Mm.
asked me to, and I'll never forget. She asked me to steal slippers. I stole like all this stuff. So of course the lady realized like all the stuff is missing, and they found it in our stuff, so they kicked us out. And when we got kicked out, that's when we was moving from place to place to place to place, from projects to all kinds of places. And then we finally stopped at an abandoned house.
Mm.
Um, it was we had boards on the windows because we didn't have a window. No running water. We had to get water out. The basement was flooded, and we used to have a hose down there to get water and wash up in the kitchen, to get hot water and stuff like that because we couldn't use the bathroom at all.
Mm.
And so living there, that's when my mom boyfriend and him they started using drugs again, and he started sexually abusing me. Then that lasted until I was about 16. Even though DHS came and got us when I was 12, every
Mm.
time I used to run away, I used to go back to my mom. So she used to always turn me in. But when I would go back, he would, and he used to do the same thing. He would just perform oral sex. And the last time when I was 16, he had rolled, I was asleep. Well, I wasn't asleep. I was actually awoke because my mom had got up. So, because we were all sleeping in the bed together. When she got up, I just like stayed awake. And when he tried to touch me, and I just was like, "Don't ever touch me again." And that's how it ended. Then, and even to this day, I realized like my mom and my dad have a lot of mental health issues, and so I feel like one of my biggest jihads is like letting go and moving forward. Because even till this day, my mom she has some ideologies that don't make sense. Even to this day. And I know it's having, because she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with psychotic features. Whenever you go into psychosis, it actually starts to damage your brain when you're not medicated.
Mm.
People don't know that. So if a person has schizophrenia and they're not medicated for 10 and 15 years, even if they start taking medication, it may not work because of their brain being damaged from all the psychosis. And so I don't know if she's always been like this, where she's always just didn't have it all, or if over time, she didn't. But she actually went to court when I finally did open up and tell that happened. She supported her boyfriend through the whole court hearing process and was extremely happy when he got off.
Mm.
So, and because of it, I feel like I think that's why I had a lot of troubles with being married, staying married, because I've always had to protect me. Like it was only me. So even like with my last husband, one time this guy, I went up and I started cussing him out. And my husband was like, "I told you I was going to take care of it. Why would you do that?"
Mm.
And I'm just like, and I'm just looking at him like, because I didn't believe you. Not because I didn't believe him. I wouldn't believe no man that would have said that they would have protected me.
Mm.
And so that's why, like, so with that story being said, people don't realize how trauma impacts you because it shapes your view of the world. So In my mind, even though men are the most dangerous thing to women, but still in my mind, I have the approach, you can't be trusted off the bat. You can't be trusted. You have to earn your trust. But see, the problem with that is when you have that idea that the person has to earn the trust because you don't trust them because they're inherently going to do something to you. Eventually, they're going to do something to you because we're human. So immediately, it's already broken because it's like, see, I knew you was going to do something, but we're human. And the sad part about those kind of ideas is that even though I'm conscious of, because going through my own therapy process, that I'm conscious of it. What people don't realize is it shows up in behaviors. It shows up in the unconscious. So even when I'm working through it, it's still going to show up because I had that belief for so long. So I'm going to behave and people act out their trauma. So it's not going to come as a conversation like, I don't trust you. It's going to come as behaviors. Like me going to the guy and decided that I was going to handle my own business. And then, so people really don't realize that we have free will. We absolutely have free will. That's one of the gave us free will. But over time, when you experience things, it shapes how you view the world and it shapes how you behave. So I always employ people to, when they do something, ask yourself, why did you do that? Because if people had a habit of saying like, oh, that's just me. No, you have no idea why you just did it.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea. It's something that you've done for so long. And
This story that you just said, right,
Mhm.
is people don't really understand how common it is in the Black community,
Mhm.
right? And it actually shapes a lot of our behaviors. And it's because of trauma that has not been dealt with for the past 500 years,
Mhm.
right? In the Moynihan report, it was mentioned that he basically he said that black marriage was a joke in the times of slavery because white man could have his way with black women whenever they wanted to.
Mhm.
Then what you have is a people who are displaced trying to make something of social cohesion and they are forced into poverty, and poverty has its own bag of social issues and social trauma, right?
Mhm.
So I was mentioning to some brothers, like I think I mentioned in a group, I can't remember, either some brothers or a particular brother, I can't remember, this was like a couple of weeks ago, right? That, do you know why black people are so obsessed with beating their kids?
Yeah, because the moms during slavery, instead of letting the slave master beat the children, they would say, "Let me do it."
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's something that was passed from slavery. If you look at a black history in Africa, there is no history of getting the twitch, and this is something that getting a twitch is a form of torture that was basically passed down from slavery directly, where the slave master will order a slave to get a stick from a tree and beat the slaves until the skin broke. And we pass these types of behaviors down from generation to generation to generation, and we don't understand where we're getting it from, right? Whereas the Prophet Sallam, he's not somebody who ever beat his children, right? I remember all the beatings I got when I was a kid from my father. You know what I mean? With all kinds of stuff, with belts and sticks. But this is what he knew,
Mhm.
right? This is what he knew. Wires, you name it, man. So this is what he knew, and because I'm interested in breaking cycles, like I can count on one hand the amount of times I beat all my children, right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's not from my practices because I don't want that to be passed down. I'm trying to break break that cycle. But what your story is so common in the Black community, it's hard to find not just black women, right? But even the men.
Mhm.
You know, have you ever heard of Tom J. Curry by any chance?
No.
You haven't heard of him?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm gonna play a clip from John J. Curry, and then we're gonna talk about it, inshallah. Okay, just give me a few moments so I can set this up. Like, subscribe, share. Hit me up on Patreon, guys. Like, even right now, just thinking about this is getting me like legit emotional, man, because our people have suffered, man. And then we can't
I'm a
we
crybaby too, so
yeah. But I'm not a crybaby. But just
I,
thinking about this, like, honestly, I'm getting emotional, man. Like, straight up.
I cry watching Undercover Boss. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible the amount of trauma that we face, and that's why I'm big on having patience with Black people, and not to tear them down, or the we are our own worst enemies, and we can't figure out why.
Hmm.
We can't figure out why we're always at each other's throats, and that again is trauma that's being
Hmm.
genetically engineered from generation to generation, passed down, passed down, passed down, and then we emulate that trauma through something that exposes the worst in us in social media, right?
And what compounded on top of that is, remember in the 90s when they had that stranger danger, it made people
Yeah,
wary of their neighbors. Because remember, like, the teachers could beat you. I mean, even though that, I'm not saying that's a good way to handle stuff, but everybody could beat you. You knew, like, if I did something that the neighbor is going to tell my mom and I'm going to get in trouble, everybody watching. Now everybody, like, I'm minding my business,
yeah,
because there's no more connection even in the community that people want for them, want good for their children and all that kind of stuff, and it just
yeah,
made it worse. Separating the community, because even in what's that, the 60s and stuff, we still had a strong Black community, where we
mhm,
could organize something. Now, organize what?
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. So like the reason why we're like that, again, it's because all of this has been stripped from us.
Mhm.
So what's not obvious to Black people yet is how powerful a solution Islam actually is for all of these issues. It's a very potent, powerful, pragmatic solution. And I'm not just saying that like just like to be cliche or anything of that type of
No.
I'm not going down that path, right? We need uh, in our community a lot more forgiveness, because this is Islamic, right? We
Hmm.
need we need
70
forgiveness.
times.
Yeah, exactly. We need excusing our brothers, excusing our sisters, making excuses. If we practice these small things, so many issues that we have will be solved. You understand? Because the first people to cause you harm are always the people that are closest to you. It's rarely outsiders,
Hmm.
right? It's always going to be your members of your family or whatnot. And it doesn't mean that they don't love you, but if they've been traumatized themselves, right? What are the chances that they're going to pass the trauma down to the next generation? And we talked about this on this channel that if you look at the single motherhood problem that we have, you have grandmothers who are single mothers. The mothers are single mothers. The child is a single mother, and that child has a daughter. What is the likelihood that that daughter is going to be a single mother?
Almost 100%.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Unless
Right. So
something changed.
unless something changed, unless you're dedicated to breaking these cycles, and the best way to be dedicated to be breaking these cycles is to be dedicated to Islam itself, right? To be get dedicated to Allah, and like, because the real simple solutions that anybody can practice is not even difficult, it's not hard, are right there in the Quran and the Sunnah.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, Black people haven't felt enough pain yet, right? They haven't felt enough pain yet, and they're not there yet. Even though we are becoming Muslim more than any other demographic, but the again, when our Islamic experience is one of interruption and interference with other people groups.
Mhm.
When we were in control of our Islamic experience, we were out on the streets. You know, nobody could sell drugs in our neighborhoods. We were united, and then we got outside interference, and then we started practicing Islam like Christianity again,
Mhm.
right?
Uh,
So
and I've been to a masjid like that where I was like, "Am I in church?"
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
had tithes and stuff. Well, don't forget to pay your fees. I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? But anyway, here is Tom J. Curry. We're gonna check this clip out, inshallah, and then we're gonna talk about it. Just give me a few moments to set this up.
Mhm.
Tell you why at the tender age of 38, I decided that we needed to create a movement. So I am trying diligently to create a field of study for Black men and boys that I call Black Male Studies. And I
It's
created
an
this by
echo.
accident. Black Male Studies started off as an academic argument. I thought I was making an intervention into history by just trying to show people that Black men were victims of rape during slavery and Jim Crow. And it was just that. It was only that. Just an academic argument. Until I started actually meeting Black men who were victims of rape, who were raped by their mother's friends, teenage girls, or other men who lived in their own neighborhoods. Your whole life changes when you hear grown Black men holding back tears or speaking through the pain of physical, sexual, or domestic abuse at the hands of Black men and women who should have loved them, cared for them, or at the most basic level, not harmed them. But what theories do we have to explain this? What theories do we have to understand how Black men and boys suffer? We often ignore the vulnerability of Black men and boys in this society. We consume so many images of Black males as dead flesh, as corpse lying in the street, that we become numb to all the factors in society that dehumanize Black men and boys before their death. Since the dawn of slavery and throughout colonization, Black men and boys have suffered horrible sexual violences and mutilation. We imagine lynchings, but can we imagine the rape of young Black men by white men who chain these Black boys to their beds? Or white women who rape the most brutalized and isolated slaves for their own sexual pleasure?
I just want to talk a quick point about this point here. What a lot of people don't know is that rape by slave masters was actually weaponized against Black men. And we're not talking about, taking the Black man to the master's bedroom and raping him. No, we're talking about stripping the biggest, strongest slave and bending him over a tree stump or something and publicly sodomizing him in front of the slaves in order to break them psychologically. And it was a process called buck breaking,
Mhm.
right? This really happened, and it was a form of psychological warfare that was practiced against slaves. This is what he's talking about right now, right? We all know about slave masters having their way with Black women, right? Which is very common. But again, these types of traumas, if they're not dealt with, then it's likely to be passed from generation to generation. And we see this with the indigenous community and with the residential schools, right? How they were, you know, molested and basically, because white folks wanted to civilize civilize the savages, right?
Mhm.
And they carry those behaviors through generation after generation after generation. And we see rampant alcoholism. It's the same type of thing. It's a type of psychological warfare, right? In order to break slaves, to make them hopeless of ever achieving anything that resembles freedom. So, so we're going to continue. Okay.
A history of America as a British colony was mired in sexual exploitation and violence. And we accept this when we think about Black female bodies. But we resist this. We deny that it's even possible when we talk about Black men. Throughout history, racialized males have been the victims of homoerotics of white supremacy. We hear of young Black boys who are raped by white women. We hear of young Black boys raped by white men with clothes hangers. We hear of young Black boys like Darren Manning, whose testicles was squeezed so hard by a female police officer that he swears that he heard an audible pop. Or in my field, you have to exist in a world with white women philosophers who rape disabled Black boys and claim it was because they were in love with them. We should understand, like Baldwin illustrates in his short story, Going to Meet the Man, that racism is a carnal hatred. It's a sexual hatred. And that we've been mistaken and short-sighted in our denial of this kind of violence towards Black males. When I was 6 years old, the first gunshot that I heard woke me from my sleep. It was a shot fired by a Black woman who lived 2 or 3 blocks away from my home. She killed her husband because she believed that her husband had been cheating on her. My mother told me that the man was innocent, that this was wrong, that he didn't deserve to die. But I've been haunted by the sound of this gunshot since I was a small child. Imagine if we believed that Black men were actually human beings that could be harmed by other people and not just bullets. Could we imagine a world where Black men were victims of domestic violence and intimate partner homicide without saying that they weren't the cause of their own deaths? What would it mean to imagine Black men as human beings? Black men and boys experience some of the harshest social conditions of any group in the United States. Despite their trauma, their witnessing of or their experience of violence, Black males are only classed as perpetrators of violence. In The Mark of Oppression by Vesey and Cardinier, 2 white psychoanalysts committed to understanding sexuality in the Negro in the 1950s, they suggested that Black boys have little use for masturbation, which usually started around the age of 6 for white boys, because Black boys often lost their virginities between the ages of 7 and 9 to usually much older adolescent girls.
This right here, I don't know sure if you heard the story of Lil Wayne, all right? But Lil Wayne described in detail, right, how he lost his virginity at like 11 years old to a much like a 16-year-old or something like that, right? And in a group sexual experience, right? So this thing that is going on in the Black community, it's so common. It's so common, and if we don't have more people like you who are there in the front lines, dealing with these situations, then it's going to be that much more difficult to deal with these situations. So, anyways, I want to get your feedback on what Mr. Tommy J. Curry was saying.
So I had a lot of males come talk about sexual trauma, in the practice. However, not as many as I suspect do have sexual traumas. Because it's this thing that for men to just, because we blame, like, when it comes to sexual trauma, we blame men for not protecting themselves. Out here to, like, oh, why didn't you fight back? I was 6, I was 11, they'll say stuff like them, like, oh, it couldn't have been me because I would have fought back. And it's just like, it has nothing to do with fighting back. It's about being violated. Because even if, let's just say it was just a touch, right? So it's just a touch, and they fought back and blah blah blah. They still were violated. It's still going to have an impact on them. I think we need to stop with judging men as if they were the perpetrator instead of the victim of these crime against them.
It's funny that you say that, because the criminalization of Black men particularly is something that is about, I mean, it's old as the end of slavery, right? And when you criminalize the victim, and the victim doesn't see any recourse for justice, where's the first place that victim is likely to take out his wrath?
Family.
Thank you. Are you hearing this, Black people? You see why it's important for us to stick together? Man, even right now I'm getting so emotional. I'm trying to I'm trying to hold it back,
because the craziest part is, even though we victimize each other, family is still the most safest place. So we start to act out it in our family because it's more safe than going out into the world and acting out.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Because if you go out into the world and act it out, you can get killed easily. We have some serious issues, and they need to be dealt with seriously. And unless we are willing to take accountability for our own actions, then nothing's going to get fixed. And we have to be much more, particularly with the way that we spend our time, how we deal with each other, things of this nature, But anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, that's fine. Actually, because you said something that is always important, because I talk about accountability all the time. And I tell people this, and I'm not saying that in every situation this is true, but a lot is. I always tell people that when something happens and something is going on in your life, a percentage of you played a part in it. And what I mean by that is, if you're in a relationship, and I'm gonna use something simple, you're in a relationship where the guy or girl is cheating on you constantly. At this point, you guys, the first time is their fault, because they went out, blah blah blah. But if you keep staying and keep doing it over and over and over again, you're participating in it. It comes to a point where you have to say, okay, I have to take some accountability for this part that I'm playing with staying. You're not making that person cheat, but you're staying. So, and I'm talking about as adults. I'm not talking about kids. With kids, they don't have a choice when it comes to like who they're living with and what they're doing and stuff like that. But it comes a point that you have a choice in some situations, not always, but a lot of them. And so when you are taking accountability for stuff, the only way to avoid not having that done to you again is really taking a good look at yourself. And I know people like, what the heck is she talking about? Think about the woman who, boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend, they're always beating on her. It's no way in God's green earth that somebody can literally pick out of millions of people an abuser. Our mind seeks to, it's called trauma reenactment. Our mind seeks out trauma to reenact it so that we can master it. So that's why it seems like they're like, why does she always get in a relationship with a cheater? Why he always get in a relationship with somebody who's ghetto, ratchet? It's because our mind is attracted, or unconscious. It's like something in our brain it lights up like, They say, hey, this is my trauma right there. I can reenact it. And we get in the same cycles all over and over and over
Yep.
again until you change how you think about situations. And that's really difficult because, again, underlying issues is usually stored in the unconscious mind. So that's when it comes, because I do a lot of CBT. So my question always is, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? What happened? Can you tell me about a time? And it's just like asking those questions because it gets people to start really like thinking like, why did I do that? And then you start to realize that it was passed down, and it was passed down, it was passed down.
And because we have so much passed down with us as Black folk, we're very quick to pass the buck of responsibility to other people, which only continues the cycle. Right? So Black people are very, very quick to blame other people for their problems.
Mhm.
Right? And it might be, they might have some reality to it. However, other people are not responsible for fixing your problems. And that's where we have to realize that we have work to do. All right. Right. And we have to do it as a family, and we have to do it together.
Yeah. And I tell people this all the time because they're coming and be like, I don't want to blame my mom for this. And I'm like, you could blame whoever you want to blame, but you still got to do the work now. It's your responsibility. You can't keep saying, I'm like this because my mom did this to me, and people going to be like, okay, so you can just continue on. No, you have to do something about it. You can blame whoever you want, but the accountability part is that you have to do something to work on whatever it is that you're dealing with and that you're struggling with. And some of it we don't even. I literally just had a situation yesterday, which is, I've never seen nothing like it, with somebody's thought process. They just had a newborn baby, and because they got into an argument, the male took the child and then a woman took the car seat. And I had to say to them, like, so how are they getting around taking the kid? They're like, oh, he literally was driving in the front seat with the baby like this. And they couldn't understand why that was dangerous. It's like a part of our brain has been shut off to realizing danger too. And it's just like, this is dangerous. They're like, I don't know what you mean. I'm like, you do realize, like, if even a speed bump could kill this baby. They're like, I don't I don't get it. But it's just like, because, and the woman was traumatized with some sexual abuse, and I don't know about the male. But usually, a lot of times, birds of a feather flock together. Again, we do trauma reenactment. So obviously, he must got something there that attracted him to her. So I know it's something there. I just don't know what it is. And that the part of their brain that says protect yourself is just gone, or protect your child is gone.
And with Black males particularly, there's a massive stigma to talk about anything relating to them and abuse, right? Because everything that we do as Black males, we're always considered the victimizers, never the victims. Like never, never, ever, ever, right? And as Mr. Curry was mentioning, like he just wanted to shed a light on something that happened during slavery. He wasn't expecting a flood of all these Black males talking about their abuse stories. And now we have a situation in modern times where there is a massive push to effeminate the Black male.
Yes.
Go ahead, talk. You talk about that.
Okay. So I know I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for this one day in the future, probably tomorrow. And I'm not saying that biologically, I do understand that biologically, sometimes people can be transvestites, that sometimes chromosomes don't always, I understand biologically some things can happen in utero that may have development of whatever the case may be. I get that. I understand that. And anybody that, I want you to just be clear. Like, I understand it. Just like even with like a female egg and a male egg, when they merge together, like sometimes they have difficulties with sexuality and stuff like that. I get it. But this is for people that don't have that issue. I have yet to meet one person in my practice that practiced homosexuality that did not have trauma, usually from the same sex parent.
Can you please repeat that again? Okay, because Dr. Omar Johnson, you could say what you want about him, but he's credentialed and he mentions this point that you say all the time. So just say it again, please.
I have yet to meet one person who practiced homosexuality outside of biological stuff, please be clear, that has not had trauma, usually, not always, usually from the same sex parent. And when I mean by trauma, it doesn't have to be sexual. It doesn't have to be sexual. People think that trauma always mean like something, well, it always physical, but they think that it's like physical abuse or sexual abuse. But sometimes the degradation of the child, because everybody yearns for their parents to love them. Everybody does. And when they don't feel loved, usually by the same sex parent, a lot of times, I'm not going to hypothesize like why it happens, but in general, I've found that they are attracted to the same sex. I can't hear you.
Now that you mentioned this, right? Now that you mentioned this point, can you please, is there a link now between a lack of fathers in a household and this phenomenon as well?
I haven't read any studies about it. I have read like I do have like statistics about like a father not being home, and educational wise, relationships wise, everything is like literally every, you know what? Do I have my phone? Every single, actually I talked about this in my last podcast if anybody want to watch it. Is in every area of a person's life when a father is not in the home, because we did a podcast about bringing fathers back into the home, they significantly do better with a father in the home, even if it's abusive.
Mm-hmm.
They still may have a lot of problems and issues and stuff like that. I'm not, going to take that away, because we still may have it, but they do significantly better in all areas of their life. I don't know if anybody ever heard of the ACE score. You can just go Google it, type it in. And on top of that, and I just want to give this story about why I believe that, and I want everybody to understand too. It's a belief. I'm not saying no cold hard facts, so try not to crucify me. But I had a client before who was trans man, and they were saying that when they were younger, his his mom never validated anything. I mean, like, he could ask for chocolate, she would say, "No, you want vanilla." Like, he said, anything, she will post everything. He said one day I came in, and I don't know what the name was, but he said one day I came in and said my name was Dan, and she said, "Okay."
Mm.
What do you think they do to a child?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, "Oh my gosh, he accepted."
Yeah.
And then how many of us, you know how they always tell you fake it till you make it, because eventually you start believing it?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think children are going to do?
Exactly.
They're going
You
to
know,
act.
Shahrazad Ali mentioned this point. The same point that you're talking about right now. She said the mind is incredibly powerful, and anything that the mind can imagine, it will make it a reality. So now you have a phenomenon where these children with these undeveloped minds are imagining that they are the opposite sex,
Mhm.
right? and they actually believe that. You understand?
And if you don't believe me when I say that, because I like a lot of times I know this is a touchy subject for people who practice homosexuality. Again, I tell you, I treat people in my practice, in my private practice, who are homosexuals, and they'll tell you that I don't treat them no different, because that's not my business. That's between you and the law. But just to show you how powerful it is, if I decided as a woman that I am pregnant, I will start having pregnancy symptoms. My stomach will get big, like I am pregnant. But you know what's so funny? Because when I was just talking about this not too long ago, how powerful the mind is. And if I can do that, if I can make myself believe that I'm pregnant, get big, like I'm about to go into labor, why can't I heal myself?
Yep, that's another point that Shahrazad Ali mentioned, that the mind itself can cause healing, right? So yeah, and we are in, yeah, we are in a heck of a situation now because of this effeminizing the black male, and it's very obvious in pop culture, in movies, you name it, right? Because if you look at television shows and movies now, because of this liberal push, it's very easy to pick on black people because you get your minority, and then you have this intersectionality with being gay and stuff of this nature. And now what you find now is that your old civil rights leaders, instead of fighting for black issues, they're fighting for LGBTQs and all this kind of stuff. And you find the same old civil rights leader. We mentioned this last night in our live, that now these leaders are now fighting in the South against abortion. You know what I mean? Because this is supposed to be an issue in the black community, right? So
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that we get so focused on the wrong things, and to speak to like television. And yes, like why, like for me it's kind of strange that they do this, because they think that for me it's like they think that I'm saying, please don't show this to kids. They're like, oh, so you're against gay people. Please don't show heterosexual stuff to my kids either. They're kids. Why are you sexualizing cartoons?
Yep.
I don't care if they homosexual. I don't care if they heterosexual. I don't care if they asexual, bisexual, half sexual. I don't care. Why does it have to be there? Period.
Hell no, to the no, no, no. Hell to the no.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing ever that they have this idea of like, let's talk about all of this sexuality. And it's like, can my kids just walk around? Because my son got this thing, he got this teddy bear that he walk around with. Let him walk around with his teddy bear and rub it. Okay.
Yep.
Like that's all he care about. Like he's 8. He don't care about nobody kissing nobody. And my oldest son, who's 12, he was like, I'm not interested in anybody. I'm like, okay. I was like, I'm just making sure, I'm just checking in. He like, no. He's like, I honestly, I don't even want to get married. But this is pre-pubescent, so
yeah, of course. Kid, normal in a normal environment, that's how children talk. Right? They're looking like boys and girls, and like, ew, girls. The girls are gross, or things of that nature, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the innocence, right? Now, what you're doing, you're stripping that innocence away, and you're replacing it with something else. And the children, their minds are not developed, and you're teaching them these things, right? And they would never have had these ideas at all unless you introduced it to them, right? So,
yeah,
seriously.
Because I think that and I believe that if the world don't introduce those kinds of things to people, one, I think probably, it's and also all healed, and obviously I think that a lot of stuff will go down. like a homosexuality, and then when you do see it, more than likely it's going to be like, that's more likely biological. Let's see if we can help this person out, because it's the idea of being attracted to something the same. If, like, let's just say if it was just nobody talked about it, that factor of having that more than likely is going to be that something probably went wrong in utero. But see, the thing about it too is, even though I may believe that some people, because I do have the belief that some people may have same-sex attraction because of some biological stuff. That doesn't mean I still condone it because you have some biological stuff. We're all born with our own jihad. And I think that's what people don't understand too. So while you're struggling with, homosexuality and same-sex attraction, even though you may have been born with it, I may be struggling with lying. Somebody else may be struggling with praying. Somebody else may be struggling with stealing. And that is something that I think people don't get. Where it's like, we all have our jihad that we have to battle with all the time.
Yep. I mean, there are sociopaths in the world, and just because you're a sociopath doesn't necessarily give you the right to go and kill whoever you want.
No, but even that term is used out of context. People think that everybody that's a sociopath is a murderer. Do you know I would actually rather have a sociopath operate on me? Because they don't have empathy. So when they're opening me up, they're not going to throw up in my body. They're not going to get nervous. All those things that human reactions have, they're not going to have, because it don't matter. They're just going to open you up and do whatever it is that they got to do. It doesn't mean that they have the inclination. Well, I'm talking about psychopaths, not sociopaths. With psychopaths, it doesn't necessarily mean they have the inclination to want to kill people.
Yeah.
Some can, because some people, they may get a little addicted to, because obviously when you do something and if they like it, the serotonin comes out, serotonin reuptake, and it feels good and blah blah blah, and they're seeking to feel better because they have less empathy and less serotonin than the average person. But again, I'd rather have a doctor that is a sociopath. I'd rather have an EMT that has ADHD, because I need you to act impulsively if I'm dying. I don't want you to stand there and be like, let me think about what I should do. No, you need to start and you need to act on which you're supposed to be doing. So I don't even want people. One of the things that I always wanted to stress too is, people look at mental health diagnoses that they're always all bad. Some of them are very helpful, actually, like ADD, psychopathy. Those things.
I mean, they're useful. They're useful for certain things, right?
Yeah.
They're useful for certain things, right? So, 100%. So, but that's their fitna. That's their, like, you know what I'm saying? They have to basically, guide their quirks, because if they don't, if it goes unguided, then you're gonna have a problem.
And that's why we have the slam.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I feel like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not put certain, I feel like he did not put these things in us if they weren't useful. And one of the things that because they have in this Black community that they push hard and heavy in our community amongst I was about to use my street term for Caucasian clinicians. They push this idea of character defects. I absolutely hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Because it's like putting them like down, and then you're saving them from their character defects. And everything has its place. So I always do this exercise when I do group therapy with people who suffer from substance abuse problems.
Yeah.
I say, hey.
And again, sorry to cut you off there, but when you were mentioning about your parents as well with the substance abuse, again, that's another imposed trauma that was inflicted on the Black community. We didn't have drug problems before the 70s. That was imposed directly from the government on the Black community. And then they turn around and say, we're going to fight this war on drugs. You know, and it's like Malcolm X said, you know, how are you going to have more police and more crime? It only shows you that the cops are in cahoots with the criminals, and we know who these criminals are. And I'm a big proponent of being um, independent as black people. We have to essentially do for ourselves
Yes.
because nobody else is going to come and do it for you. Right? We have to depend on Allah first, and then we have to depend on each other and stop trying to unite with all these other people groups who don't give a damn about you. Right, but anyway, go ahead, continue. Sorry to
Yes.
cut you. I just
No.
had to say
So no, I get it. I get it. And even with gentrification, I got hope that ties into that portion of it. But with character defects, I tell people, I said, we're going to go, and I make them write down their character defects. I put it on the board and blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, well, what's another way that can be useful? Or I'll be like, well, you put that you're selfish. Why can't it be self-care? And he'd be like, well, yeah. I'll be like, I was like, I've always been called a manipulator, that like literally in my chart, they wrote in my chart in DHS that I'm manipulative and know how to work the system. That's what they wrote. Somebody had told me, I was like, oh my goodness. I said, but it's interesting because if I was a white child, they would say I was resourceful.
Yeah.
And able to get my needs met.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I say, well, if I give you Play-Doh and I tell you to play with the Play-Doh, what are you doing to the Play-Doh? They'd be like, well, I'm manipulating. Yes. So the point that I be trying to make to them is that it's not about what quote defects that you have. It's about what do you do with them. That's the real importance. So if you're a psychopath, go be a doctor.
Yep.
Don't go out and kill people.
Or CEO or something.
Yes, or CEO or something like that where you can't be afraid and you can't be scared easily. Go do something like that. You definitely can use. I feel like the things that Los Manos gave us is gifts. It really is gifts if you think of it differently than how you think of stuff. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I get that some is debilitating, like depression or bipolar disorder. I'm not saying that every single one is just like happy go lucky, like yay, pulls me. No. But what I am saying though is that you can learn a lot from your diagnosis and things that you are going through. And even like with depression, like because a lot of times kids are not born with depression. It happens later in life, right?
Yep.
To me, that's your body saying, I'm tired.
Yep.
I'm tired.
Depression is usually brought on some sort of traumatic event that happened in your life, and your mind cannot like get out of that cycle. Like you're always stuck in that point of time, right? So now you're depressed, right? And stress is the opposite. Stress is something that you're thinking about in the future that hasn't happened, but you're thinking about it so much, right? That it affects you psychologically and physically. Right, so you're thinking, oh, what am I? I'm going to get kicked out of my house. I can't pay my bills. Blah, blah, blah. That's stress, and depression is the opposite. Maybe some family member died and whatever, or somebody you love left you, and now you're in a funk.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we have so much trauma in the Black community. We really can't be at each other's throats like that. We have to help each other and forgive each other and. And those people who are not really dedicated to lifting each other up, we have to cut them off. I'm sorry, you know what I mean? Because we really don't have time for all of that. All of us have, like, particularly in the Black community, we all have some trauma that we're dealing with. So anyways, go ahead. I'll let you get the last words in, inshallah.
No, but you know what? And that's interesting that you said that because I was just listening to a cookbook probably like last weekend where the brother was saying like, people would inquire about marrying somebody and they're like, oh yeah, he's a good brother. And let the people get married knowing that it's not true. Like, do you know that's a sin to bear a false testimony? And I think that we need to again go back to traditions where that's why families would arrange marriages because I know your family, my family.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I mean, just think about when you were a kid and your mom be like, "Don't hang with that kid. Don't hang." You'd be like, "Why? I don't understand it." When you get under, you're like, "Oh, I understand why." Because parents have more wisdom than their kids. Like,
Exactly.
and I tell people all the time, if you don't learn nothing else, you don't have to make every mistake in the book.
Mhm.
You don't. You can literally ask for advice. You
Yeah.
can literally take the advice.
Yeah.
You don't have to make every single mistake in the freaking book,
And
but also to open
we
the book.
really need to learn how to how to take advice, you know,
Yeah.
and that's another big problem in the black psyche where
Mhm.
somebody's giving you like honest advice, but you can't accept it because you're seeing advice as insulting or something like that.
Yeah, you got to be open to corrective feedback.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So go ahead, sis. I'll let you close it out, inshallah.
Yes.
Go
So,
ahead.
at the end of all of this, one of the things that I want to end with is that I love you all, Fisabilillah. I don't care who you are. It is no judgment here. I've always, mashallah, proud of myself with being very welcoming, because at the end of the day, I can't help you if you think that people are going to judge you. And that's the thing too. We got to stop judging people regardless of what they come to you and bring to you, because we have this mindset that is like I don't even know. It's just it's too intricate to even say it here. But we just have to come to a point where we're not judging people. And if you feel like you can't do that, refer them to somebody who can.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm not capable of doing this.
Mhm.
So, even if you're not going to help, like the other brother said, don't create harm.
Yeah.
Don't create harm.
Mhm.
Refer them to somebody else. Do something different.
Mhm.
You
Exactly.
don't have to say anything.
Anything. Yeah, exactly. You can't really control what other people are doing, but you can control how you respond.
Yeah.
Understand?
And yes, no, and I'm going to say this too, because perception is very important. Because I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of times it goes back to what I was saying about taking responsibility for how you behave and react to stuff. I always
Mhm.
give the analogy like I can slap four people and everybody respond differently,
Mhm.
because the way they respond is based on who they are, not the stimuli. The
Mhm.
slap was just a stimuli.
Mhm.
So when you behave a certain kind of way, because I hate when I dislike. I don't hate. I
Mhm.
dislike when I see on social media where they're like, oh, they always talk about how I responded, but never what they did. You responded that way because that's who you are.
Yep. And yep, and you become predictable like that. You become predictable. People can easily trigger you, press your buttons, and then next thing you're embarrassing yourself publicly on social media.
Yes.
You know what I
So
mean?
just remember that
And
you that's you. That's all you.
yeah, and really the enemy, that's how they basically deal with black people as well, because they understand you. If you see, there's a shift now with black politics, because the enemy is using those old tactics, like with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Oh, we got a black Supreme Court woman judge. You see what I'm saying? And the black community is responding differently now. You feel me? Because these tactics are not working anymore.
Oh
You
yeah,
get it?
they started taking her relationships like, yeah, see, she had to go get a white man because black man. I was like,
Yeah.
trying to tear down black men because black men couldn't handle a strong woman like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I was like,
these old tired tactics are not working anymore in the black community, right? You can't control what other people are doing. You can control how you respond. If you say or and do nothing, then those people, they can't really manipulate you
mhm.
because they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're planning, right? And planning a response is much better than reacting to a response,
Mhm.
right? So yeah. So can you tell us about your YouTube?
Yes. So every Monday I do this a podcast called Mental Health Monday. Um and basically I pick a topic and we'll talk about that. And a lot of times, well, all of it is surrounding relational trauma. and different things that people can do to combat that. So like one of them was, well, one I did like a history on Islam and how we actually was the first ones who had a mental health hospital. People don't know that. It was in Baghdad about the 5th or 6th century. And it was placed in the middle of town because this is how much we love people. It was placed in the middle of town because we're obligated to visit the sick.
Mm.
And that's why I was there.
Mm.
There were no restraints. People were allowed to walk around the facility. They planted gardens and stuff so it could be a beautiful sight that people can see. Like this is what Islam is about. We help the people who are sick.
Mm.
We help the people who are sick, okay? Like, and
Mm.
when you are traumatized, you really are sick.
Mm.
You really are sick. And some people are sick and don't even know that they're sick.
Yep.
And you're dying because your body literally keeps the score.
Mm.
And it will break down your body systems. And for that point, like because of like my sexual abuse history, and I'll never forget this. So I have osteoarthritis of my spine is crumbling down, and my neck is actually starting to go forward. And he said, when you do that, he said when you look down like that, he's like it makes your head heavier and it puts stresses on your neck. Because after the abuse, I used to walk with my head down everywhere I went,
Mm.
so I won't make eye contact. I always keep my I took lowering your gaze to a whole new level,
Mm.
and that's how I walked. And I know that that's for years that I've done that. And now I got to get all this, rehab and stuff like that to try to correct it before I need surgery.
Mm.
So that's important. So we talk about mental health history and, a lot of things that um, we contributed, and a lot of the things that I feel like were just stolen from us because, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam talked about behavioral modification. When I was telling somebody that he told somebody to follow up a bad deed with a good deed, that's behavioral modification, is replacing one behavior with another.
Yep.
And when we was talking about uh, Freud and his ego and super ego, we have nafs,
Mm.
the heart,
Mm.
and becoming more taqwa in the law. That's the super ego, and
Mm.
relying on the law and stuff like that. So we already have that, and a lot of times we look to our counterparts to say, hey, um what does psychology say about this? When you can crack open the Quran, in Surah Yusuf, he talks about the brother Yusuf, Jacob going blind.
Benjamin.
Yes, going blind
Benjamin.
because,
Yeah.
yes, going blind because of the grief of his son,
Oh yeah.
so
Yakub. Yakub. Yeah.
yeah. So my thing is, even with that being said, it's
Mm.
showing you the relationship with stress, emotions,
Mm.
with your body.
Yes.
You really don't need um to look towards those things to get what you need.
Mm.
And I know, like, when I look, the only reason why I study these things is so that when I'm talking to my counterparts, we can all be on the same page.
Mm.
But when it comes to Muslims, I'm like, you don't have to do that. You don't. It's already there. All of the CBT, all of the behavioral modification, all the motivational interviewing, and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
already
It's
there.
already there,
The
and
Prophet
it's
sallallahu
very
alaihi
simple. It's like it's laid out so simply. All you have to do is dedicate yourself to actually following the text. If you
wasallam.
follow the Quran and Sunnah the way that the Sahaba understood it, once you start dedicating yourself to doing those things, and you don't have to do everything, just do the small,
Mhm,
basic things. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned, follow up a bad deed with a good deed.
mhm,
That's little small things like this, not backbiting. Like,
mhm.
how difficult is it to not talk, right?
Yes,
How
yes.
difficult is it to not respond?
Because the sad part is that people feel uncomfortable in silence.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's okay to be silent.
Mhm.
But also too, like, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would When he would shake people's hand, he did not bring his hand back until the other person did, because you know what that is? It's telling them like, I'm here with you. Whenever you're ready, you can pull away, but I'm just knowing that I'm here. And he would listen to people and their complaints, and he would follow up with questions, open-ended questions, and then he would give verdicts and stuff like that. Just simple things is important. It's just important. And he always made himself available to people.
And he was doing it in the spirit of like love and brotherhood, and look like genuine concern, not in the spirit of trying to break people down, or like, we need to get out of that. Like right now there's a massive gender war between black men and black women, right? And we have to, like I said, we have to be dedicated to the change. If we're not dedicated to change, then nobody else is going to help us. 100%, right? The really the responsibility is on us. Go ahead, sis. I know I kept telling you. But this conversation, I think, is very beneficial.
So then I talk about polygyny and the men's responsibility and polygyny, and how that impacts your mental health. Women's responsibility and polygyny. Because I think people just take it way too far. Like even myself. Okay, someone who has practiced polygyny, sometimes we just take it, way too far. And let me tell you something, women. As you get older, and I'm not that old, but as you get older, peace is amazing, right? And guess when you get the most peace? When your husband is gone. Because, and I'm not trying to be funny, but you don't have to be a wife. You know what I'm saying? And and it gives you time to miss your husband. But see, we get so caught up in like, I wonder what he doing. I wonder if he love her. I wonder if they having sex. First of all, let's stop. Pause. When your husband is in your house, or you're saying, I love you all day, or you're having sex all day, like, no, it's called a family. Things has to happen. We gotta take care of the kids. I gotta work. This gotta happen. That gotta happen. Yeah, you find some quality time, but let's be real. When you are a real adult, how much quality time is really happening?
And I want to add to that too, is that the sisters have to benefit from the hadith of Ibrahim and his son Ismail, right? And not be the one that Ibrahim said changed the threshold of your gate, right? You have to compete for your husband. You understand that? If you compete for your husband, believe me, you'll be so happy, right?
You know what's so funny? It's so funny because that was me, right? Let me tell you something. When it was just me, it'd be like, so oh wait, you need your feet washed. Like, what you need? Want dinner every day? But the craziest thing though, that was when I was the happiest. I was the happiest when I didn't work and being home and taking care of the house. Like, I was the most happiest than at any point in time in my life. But because of trauma, I work ungodly. I work 2 full-time jobs and still have my practice. How I do it? Allahu Alam. But it's because that fear of not having and going without is hard for me to give up.
And this has been drilled in Black women since the 60s, since the Black feminism movement started, right? Where you had Black women who were basically given checks from the government. The government came in and started becoming the surrogate fathers of these children inside the household, right? And then the whole sisters are doing it for themselves movement started. We don't need no man and all this kind of stuff. So we, as Black people, we have to know what plots are being plotted against us. And again, it comes back down to Islam being a pragmatic, practical solution, just a simple, small things. If you practice them, right, your life will be so much better. And this trauma that you're mentioning, right, you are not the first Black woman to practice this, and you won't be the last for a long time. All
Yes.
right, all right. So we have to work together as a family to solve these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Black men need to support each other so that we can get gainful employment, so that we can support our families. Right? Black women need to, you know, be protected, of course, and have the traits and develop the traits of being wives and these type of things. Focus on that stuff, right? If we focus on the things that are important, then everything will kind of fall into place,
Yeah.
right? And we have to do it in like a manner of love and concern
Mm-hmm.
out of each other, not just beating each other down and at each other's throats and
Yeah.
things of that nature.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm sorry. Like, as a educated woman who had supported herself for many, many years, I had the most peace when I didn't have to work.
Mm.
Because I remember my grad school teacher used to say this all the time. When you go out into the work field, you're gonna realize how dumb clinicians are. Then you get out into the work field and you realize how dumb clinicians are. And then you're like, why am I dealing with this? Why don't I let y'all deal with the dummies? Like I want to be like
Yeah.
at peace. I want to be at peace. I'm sorry. And that was the most peace that I've had. Um, is being home. It's being
Yeah.
home.
Okay, so Jazakallah khair, sis. Let us know the name of your YouTube, please.
Yes. So it's everyone like the number one underscore favorite underscore therapist.
Hmm.
Um, so you can find me there. You can also go to my Facebook, which is Michelle Renee Davis. I had to keep my middle name because my name is so common. So go to Facebook with Michelle Renee Davis, and you can also go to my YouTube, which is everyone's favorite therapist.
Yeah.
Um, I say YouTube. I mean, well, yes, YouTube and Instagram.
Yes.
So
And you're also on Psychology Today as well, right?
yes, because I'm a licensed professional counselor, so I'm on Psychology Today. Um, I can only, just so people know, I can only do therapy in Pennsylvania, but I can do coaching outside of Pennsylvania.
Mhm. And I wanted to make a suggestion as well because uh, your profession is so needed in our community. Like I can't even stress the importance of what you're doing, right, and the work that you're doing. That I want to suggest that any of the brothers and the sisters who are in your community, particularly where you are, talk to your imams and try to find a way to get in contact with the sister so that she can help the community and get in. If your imams are collecting money for the masjid, believe me, this is just as, if not even more important. Because without the correct psychology, then what's the point of supporting a masjid that's pushing out dysfunctional people, right?
Mhm.
Support the sister, and it's an amana. It's an amana. She's qualified, and you know how Philly is, all right?
Yeah.
You know
And
how Philly is, all
yes,
right?
the Wakil at Imam Muslim Family Center, he has my phone number.
All
So
right, mashallah.
yeah, just to put it
Yes,
out.
just talk to them. Talk to them.
Um,
You
Also too, like if you inbox me,
know.
please, please, please put your question with your salams.
Yes.
Please. Because if you don't, I do not respond. It's not that I don't want to give the rights to the believers, but usually the next follow-up is, are you married? That's usually the follow-up.
Yeah, yeah. Brothers and sisters, if you're going to, even as an advice, right, when you're talking to somebody you don't know, put your question up front so that they can answer you correctly and they can know that you're not a joker or anything like that, right? If you're not able to afford the sister's services, please ask the community to come up with money so that this service can be given to you, right?
So let me tell you something.
Mhm.
I have this, and this is why I work two full-time jobs. My companion, who also works at the practice, who is Muslim, she tells me that I need to charge full rates. But
Mhm.
I don't have anybody at the practice that I'm seeing right now that pays my full $120.
And that is a damn shame. I'm sorry. And on top of that, if we see these problems happening in our community, it's the response. I'm sorry, it's the responsibility of the imams to address this. You know, and we talk about this a lot on this channel. Actually, I'm not sure how many videos you've seen, right? But this masjid industrial complex needs to stop. Just asking for money for the masjid, and you need these types of services, which are just as if not more important, so that our youth can stop killing each other in the streets. You know, like the the graveyards is filled with Muslim bodies in Philly.
Do
You
you
know what I
know
mean?
it's and surprisingly, and I haven't been doing my due diligence, so some part of it is on me. But even with trying to find space, I had went to one masjid where it was supposed to be, all good. I was going to set up space inside there so that people could have a physical location to come. It just went downhill. I don't know what happened. It just went downhill, and I'm like, physical, like, you know, I'm trying to protect myself, obviously, from Reba, because I can't get a mortgage so I can open up a place. And then, renting these facilities for offices are expensive as crap. And if I don't have people paying my full rate, so it's like a circular thing.
Exactly. So we as a community, I'm a big proponent of supporting each other. You know, if your masjid has any good in it, then let them support this sister, right? All the masajid in your area should be supporting this sister and sisters like this sister, and the brothers like this sister as well, because this is something that we actually need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't need to put a new carpet in the masjid. I'm sorry, we need we need this stuff.
And the
right?
good thing about me being licensed is that even people who decide to go and become a therapist, I can supervise you. So that you can, one, know what I know, obviously, and get taught the Islamic perspective, because they're not going to teach you that in the facilities. So I'm able to do all your internships and stuff like that with me. So.
And then we can build a community, right? That's where
my goal.
Yeah. Okay. But Jazakumullah khair, hayakumullah. May Allah reward you and bless you so much. I want to ask Allah to bless our guests tonight, everybody that participated in the live and watched this most important live, this convert profiles with our sister, Michelle Renee Davis. And may Allah reward the sister and bless the sister. And may Allah help us unite our community upon the Quran and Sunnah with the understanding of the Salaf as-Salih. سبحانك وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت واستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We are the Muslim wing of the Black grassroots. Unapologetic, strong, uncompromising voices that have been in the faces of the enemy and those who tap dance for them. The Features is proud to present the archives exclusively on Patreon.